My name is Helen, and I'm 59 years old. I never thought my own daughter would betray me at an airport. For as long as I can remember, my life has revolved around my daughter, Emily. I raised her alone after her father left when she was just 2 years old. I worked 2 jobs, sacrificed sleep, and gave up dreams of my own so that she could have hers. Every meal I skipped so she could eat better, every dollar I saved so she could have a chance at a future, I poured myself into being her mother. Emily was my pride, my purpose, my everything. I imagined that one day, all those sacrifices would be worth it, that she would not only succeed, but also cherish the bond we had. I thought love like mine couldn't be broken, but I was wrong. For years I dreamed of going to Paris. I had books about the Eiffel Tower, maps of the city, and magazines with glossy pictures of cafes and flower markets. I always told myself that someday, when Emily was grown and things were easier, we'd go together. It wasn't just about travel, it was about sharing something magical with my daughter. So when Emily surprised me months ago by suggesting a Paris trip for us, I cried. She said it was her way of giving back, of saying thank you. I believed her. My heart swelled with joy as we booked the flights, packed our bags, and talked about the adventures we'd have. It felt like the reward I had been waiting for. The morning of the flight, I was giddy with excitement. I wore the scarf I had been saving for Paris, the one I'd never worn because it wasn't the right occasion. My hands shook as I zipped my suitcase. Emily seemed more restless than excited, tapping on her phone constantly, barely looking at me. I chalked it up to nerves. After all, this was her first big international trip. At the airport, I held on to every moment like it was precious. The smell of coffee from the terminal cafe, the hum of voices, the rolling of suitcases across the tile. To me, it all symbolized adventure. I kept pointing things out, trying to share the joy. Emily just nodded, eyes glued to her phone. I brushed it off. Check-in was smooth. We handed over our passports, received our boarding passes, and walked through security. I remember holding my pass tightly, smiling to myself, thinking, we're really doing this. But as we neared the gate, I noticed something strange. Emily's face looked tense, her jaw tight. She kept glancing around, as though she was waiting for something or someone. I asked if she was okay. She gave me a quick smile, said, "Yeah, just tired," and went back to her phone. I didn't push. I didn't want to ruin the moment. We sat near the gate, waiting for boarding. I pulled out a small journal I had bought to document our trip, scribbling down my excitement. Emily leaned forward suddenly and said, "Mom, I think there's a problem with your passport." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She held up her phone. "The airline sent me a message. Something about your documents not matching the reservation. Don't worry. I'll go talk to the staff. You stay here with the bags." Relief washed over me for a moment. Of course, it was just a clerical error. Emily was always good with details. She'd sort it out. "Thank you," I said, handing her my passport. She nodded quickly and walked off. Minutes passed. Then 20. Boarding time ticked closer. I checked my phone, no messages. I sent her a text. "Everything okay?" No response. I called, straight to voicemail. Panic prickled at my chest. I stood, craning my neck to scan the terminal. And then I saw her. Emily stood at a different gate. She wasn't talking to airline staff. She wasn't fixing anything. She was laughing with friends I didn't recognize. And in her hand was a boarding pass. Just one. The realization hit me like ice water in my veins. My boarding pass. My ticket. She wasn't coming back. I wanted to move, to shout, to stop her, but my body locked in place. The speaker overhead announced boarding for her gate. I watched in disbelief as she handed over the pass, smiled, and walked through. She didn't look back. Not once. The journal slid from my lap onto the floor, pages fluttering open to the words I had written just minutes earlier. so excited for Paris with Emily. Tears blurred my vision as the boarding call for my flight echoed through the terminal. I clutched the armrest of my chair, my heart breaking into pieces. What I didn't know was that this trip wasn't ours, it was hers alone. It all started with a lie that I believed because I trusted my daughter. I sat there at the gate, clutching my purse, waiting for Emily to come back with news. I kept telling myself it was just a small hiccup, a clerical mistake that she was sorting out. That's what mothers do, we believe in our children, even when the evidence whispers otherwise. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I kept glancing at the departure board, watching the countdown to boarding. My phone stayed silent. I tried calling again straight to voicemail. I sent another text. They're boarding soon. Where are you? Nothing. Anxiety clawed at my chest. I picked up my things and began pacing near the gate, scanning every face in the crowd. Travelers bustled past me, laughing, hurrying, sipping coffee, pulling rolling suitcases. To them, it was just another day. To me, it felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. Emily wasn't at the customer service counter. She wasn't talking to airline staff. She wasn't fixing anything for me. She was standing at a different gate entirely, her back straight, her face lit with excitement. She wasn't alone. 2 girls about her age stood beside her, laughing, snapping selfies, clutching shopping bags. And in Emily's hand was a single boarding pass. My boarding pass. The world went still. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat, my body refusing to move. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I wanted to shout her name, but my voice lodged in my chest, strangled by disbelief. She had lied. She had taken my passport, my boarding pass, and used them for herself. The Paris trip I thought we were sharing was never ours. It was hers from the start. I forced my legs to move, stumbling toward the gate. My voice finally cracked free. "Emily!" I shouted, my cry lost in the noise of the terminal. She turned for the briefest moment, her eyes meeting mine. And that look, it wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was cold, detached, almost smug. I staggered closer, but an airline agent blocked my way. Checking boarding passes. "Ma'am, do you have a ticket for this flight?" My daughter. She. My words tumbled out incoherently. I tried to explain, to tell them it was my ticket, my trip, my passport. But Emily had already handed hers over, smiling like she belonged there. The agent gave her a polite nod and waved her through. "Wait!" I cried, trying to push forward, but the agent shook her head firmly. "Ma'am, please step aside." Emily didn't even hesitate. She walked down the jet bridge with her friends, laughing, not once looking back at the mother she had left behind. The loudspeaker blared again. Final boarding call. But not for me. Not anymore. I stumbled backward, collapsing into a nearby chair. My hands trembled as I clutched my purse, my heart hammering so loudly I thought it might tear itself apart. My journal, still in my bag, pressed against my side like a cruel reminder of the trip that would never be. Around me, strangers whispered, their eyes darting toward me, pity etched on their faces. I wanted to vanish, to melt into the floor, to escape the humiliation burning across my skin. My own daughter had stolen from me, lied to me, abandoned me, and she had done it so brazenly, in public, as if my love, my trust, meant nothing. I buried my face in my hands, tears spilling hot and fast. I had given her everything, every sacrifice, every ounce of my being, and in return, she had taken the one dream I held for myself and ripped it away without hesitation. The intercom chimed cheerfully. Flight to Paris now departing. And with that, the life I thought I had, the bond I thought was unbreakable, lifted off without me. And with that, my daughter boarded a plane to Paris, leaving me stranded behind. I ran through the terminal with a mother's desperation, but I was already too late. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I grabbed my purse, my suitcase dragging behind me, and pushed through the crowd. My heart thundered so loudly I could barely hear myself scream her name. Emily! Emily! Wait! For the briefest second, she turned. Our eyes locked across the distance, me, frantic and trembling, her, calm and composed. She didn't look surprised to see me running after her. She didn't look guilty either. If anything, she looked annoyed. I shoved past travelers, earning glares and muttered complaints, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered except reaching her before she disappeared through that gate. Ma'am, stop! The airline agent stepped into my path again, blocking the entryway. You can't board without a pass. I have one, I shouted, my voice cracking. I fumbled with my purse, pulling out my wallet, shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. She stole my ticket. My daughter, she used my pass. My passport. That seat is mine. The agent frowned, skeptical but firm. Ma'am, please step aside. Your daughter has already boarded. If you're not on the manifest, you cannot proceed. No! No! You don't understand. My voice was breaking, wild with panic. I gestured helplessly toward the jet bridge. She's my child. She tricked me. She took my... But my words dissolved into sobs. People had stopped to stare now. Families clutched their children closer. Business travelers shook their heads, whispering to one another. I could feel their pity like daggers against my skin. Emily paused at the end of the jet bridge, just before disappearing from sight. She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her smirk. A smirk. The same child I had raised, protected, sacrificed for smirked at my suffering like it was nothing. Then she was gone. The agent's voice cut through the fog of my panic. I'm sorry, ma'am. If you'd like to book another flight, please proceed to customer service. I stumbled back, my legs weak, my chest heaving as though the air itself had turned against me. My suitcase clattered to the floor, the sound echoing louder than it should have. My hands trembled so violently I had to clutch the armrest of a nearby chair just to steady myself. The gate door closed. The plane pulled away. The finality of it hit me like a sledgehammer. The daughter I had poured my life into had walked away from me without hesitation. Not just walked away, she had stolen from me, humiliated me, and abandoned me in front of strangers. I sank into the chair, tears streaming unchecked down my cheeks. Around me, whispers swirled. A woman nearby leaned to her husband and murmured, "Did you see? Her own daughter left her." Another man shook his head and muttered, "Shameful." Their words cut deeper than knives. I buried my face in my hands, wishing I could vanish. The humiliation was unbearable. Not only had my daughter betrayed me, but she had done so in the most public, cruel way imaginable. I thought of every sleepless night I had spent working double shifts to pay for her schooling. Every birthday where I scraped together enough to make her feel special. Every hug I had given when she cried. And now all of it had been repaid with betrayal. The loudspeaker chimed cheerfully again. Flight to Paris has now departed. The sound hollowed me out. That flight was supposed to be my dream, my reward after years of sacrifice. Instead, it had become her escape, a dream she had stolen, leaving me behind in the ruins. I pressed my palm to my chest, the ache unbearable. It wasn't just the loss of the trip, it was the loss of trust, of love, of the bond I thought could never be broken. For a long time, I sat motionless, tears drying on my cheeks, the world bustling indifferently around me. My body felt numb. But inside, something began to shift. I realized then that this wasn't just a missed flight. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the moment my daughter showed me who she truly was. And in that single moment, I realized my daughter had chosen Paris over me. The airport that once promised adventure now felt like a graveyard for my trust. I stayed seated long after the plane left the gate, unable to move, unable to breathe properly. Around me, families gathered their belongings, couples rushed to catch connecting flights, and children tugged on their parents' hands. Life went on for everyone else. But for me, time had stopped. I stared at the empty gate door, the one my daughter had vanished through. My mind played it over and over again, the smirk on her face, The way she didn't even hesitate. The way she walked away from me like I was nothing. I pulled my journal from my bag, the one I had bought to document our Paris adventures. It sat open to the first page where I had written just hours earlier. So excited for Paris with Emily. My tears splattered onto the ink, blurring the words until they became unreadable. The announcements overhead grew distant, muffled. The rolling of suitcases and the chatter of travelers faded into static. All I could hear was my heartbeat, heavy and broken, and the cruel echo of her laughter as she disappeared into the jet bridge. Eventually, a janitor gently asked me if I was waiting for someone. His kind eyes made me cry harder. I shook my head and whispered, "Not anymore." I gathered my things and stumbled out of the terminal. Each step felt heavier than the last. The scarf I had saved for this trip clung around my neck like a mockery of what could have been. The taxi ride home was a blur. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the city rush past in streaks of color. Paris had been just hours away, but now it might as well have been another planet. My chest ached with every breath, as though grief itself had weight. When I walked into the house, it felt foreign. The walls that once held laughter and dreams now pressed in on me, suffocating with silence. Emily's shoes were still by the door, her jacket hung on the hook. Her room upstairs, empty but alive with her presence, mocked me with its familiarity. I dropped my suitcase in the hallway and collapsed onto the couch. The stillness pressed against me until I couldn't take it anymore. I began replaying everything in my head, every red flag I had ignored. Her sudden secrecy with her phone. Her irritation whenever I asked simple questions. The late nights out with friends I had never met. The way she brushed off conversations about our trip, never showing the same excitement I felt. I had noticed all of it. I had felt the unease deep in my gut. But I pushed it away, telling myself she was just being young, just being independent. I told myself not to be paranoid, not to smother her. But it hadn't been independence. It had been deception. The deeper I thought, the more the memories twisted into knives. I remembered the night she told me about the Paris trip. How I had cried tears of joy. She had hugged me, whispered, "You deserve this, Mom." Now those words rang hollow, poisoned with the knowledge that she had already been planning to take it from me. I remembered every birthday where I worked extra shifts so she could have a party. Every Christmas where I went without so she could have gifts under the tree. Every time I told her I loved her, even when she hurt me with careless words. And in return she had left me alone in an airport. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my body exhausted but my mind racing. Every creak of the house reminded me of her absence. Every silence screamed her betrayal. At some point, the tears dried, replaced by something heavier. Not anger yet, just emptiness. A hollowness that reached all the way to my bones. I kept asking myself the same question. How could she? How could my own daughter choose Paris over me? The answer never came. Only silence. But in that silence, something began to stir. A thought. Faint but persistent. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this was the beginning of something else. But if she thought I would stay broken forever, she was wrong. Grief can drown you, but sometimes it transforms into fire. The days after the airport felt endless. I wandered through the house in silence, replaying that moment over and over again, my daughter walking away from me, smirking as if my pain was nothing. At first, I cried until my body ached. I thought maybe if I shed enough tears, the hurt would leave me too, but it didn't. Instead, something else began to take root. Anger. It started as a flicker, small but undeniable. Every time I walked past Emily's room, that flicker grew. Her clothes still hung in the closet, her perfume still lingered in the air, her half-finished coffee mug still sat on her desk. Each reminder whispered the same truth. I had given her everything, and she had repaid me with betrayal. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open in front of me. My hands trembled as I entered the password I had seen her use countless times. The screen lit up, and what I found inside shattered what was left of my heart. Messages. Dozens of them. Threads between Emily and her friends about the Paris trip. Can't believe she fell for it. Your mom's really letting you take her ticket? That's savage. She's old, she doesn't need Paris. You deserve it. More. And Emily's replies, lol, she thinks it's a bonding trip. She's gonna flip when she realizes. Don't care. Paris is mine. She'll get over it. She always does. My hands shook so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. Reading those words was worse than seeing her walk away. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't an impulse. It was deliberate, planned, mocked. For years, I had convinced myself that the small acts of selfishness were just phases. The eye rolls, the dismissive tone, the entitlement. I had explained it all away because she was my daughter, because I wanted to believe in her goodness. But now, staring at those messages, I saw the truth. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had enjoyed it. My grief hardened into rage. I called my sister that night. The moment she heard my voice, she knew something was wrong. I told her everything, the airport, the messages, the betrayal. There was silence on the other end, followed by a shaky breath. Helen, she said softly. I don't even know what to say. That's cruel, pure cruelty. I wiped my eyes. I gave her my whole life, every ounce of me. And this is how she repays me? You don't deserve this, my sister said firmly. And she needs to face consequences. Real ones. You've protected her from everything her whole life, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's time you protect yourself. Her words hit me hard. Protect myself. For so long, my only instinct had been to protect Emily, from bullies, from disappointment, from failure. But who had protected me? No one. That night, I sat at my desk and began gathering everything I found. Screenshots of her messages, notes about her friends bragging, evidence of her betrayal, not because I needed to prove it to anyone else, but because I needed to remind myself that this was real, that I wasn't imagining it. For the first time in decades, I stopped asking, how do I fix this for her? And started asking, how do I fix this for me? The next morning, I woke up different. My tears had dried. My chest still hurt, but there was a new steadiness in my steps. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, enough. Enough sacrificing without gratitude. Enough forgiving without remorse. Enough letting my love be treated like weakness. Emily had made her choice. Now I would make mine. I called my lawyer that afternoon. My voice didn't shake as I explained what happened. I told her I wanted to update my will, to secure my assets, to make sure my life's work wouldn't be squandered by someone who had no respect for it. My lawyer didn't hesitate. We can do that, she said. You don't owe her everything just because she's your daughter. You have every right to protect yourself. For the first time since the airport, I felt a surge of power, small but undeniable. I wasn't just the abandoned mother anymore. I was a woman preparing for battle. That night, I sat on the couch, clutching the journal that had once been meant for Paris memories. Instead, I filled its pages with a new story, mine. Every red flag I had ignored, every sacrifice I had made, every betrayal I had uncovered. Each word steadied me, turning pain into resolve. Because if Emily thought she could leave me broken forever, she was wrong. And that night, I promised myself I would not be her victim anymore. The house I once filled with love now looked like a crime scene. Every step I took through the hallways reminded me of Emily, her shoes by the door, her jacket on the chair, her perfume lingering in the air. But instead of comfort, those reminders filled me with anger. This wasn't my daughter's home anymore. This was where she had plotted against me. I started in her bedroom. The walls were covered with posters and photos of her and her friends, smiling faces that now seemed cruel in their innocence. I opened drawers, looked through her desk, and searched the places where she used to hide things as a child. I wasn't snooping, I was uncovering evidence. And I found plenty. In the back of her desk drawer, hidden under notebooks, were receipts. Not just one or two, but dozens. Expensive clothing, jewelry, and electronics, things I had never bought for her. Things she had clearly used my money to purchase. My heart pounded as I spread them across her desk, the proof staring back at me. She hadn't just stolen my ticket to Paris, she had been stealing from me for months, maybe years. Then I opened her closet. Buried in a box under her shoes was an envelope stuffed with euros cash she must have exchanged for the Paris trip. My throat tightened. That money had come from my savings, money I had worked overtime to earn. She had taken it without hesitation. My hands shook as I picked up the envelope. This wasn't just betrayal. It was robbery. I sat on her bed, staring at the pile of receipts, the envelope of cash, the evidence of her deception. My stomach turned, but my resolve grew sharper. This wasn't a spoiled child making mistakes. This was a young woman who thought she could exploit me forever. I moved to her laptop again, digging deeper. I checked her email this time. What I found made my chest tighten. She had booked the Paris hotel herself, not for 2 people, just one. She had never intended for me to go. Weeks before she even mentioned the trip, she had been planning it for herself. And in her messages, she bragged to her friends, "She thinks we're going together. Can't wait to see her face. She won't stop talking about Paris, too bad she's not coming." The cruelty of it cut deeper than anything else. Not only had she betrayed me, she had enjoyed it. She had mocked me for believing in her, for trusting her, for dreaming of a future together. I took photos of everything, receipts, emails, cash, messages. Each click of my phone camera steadied me. This was no longer just about heartbreak. This was about justice. The next day, I went to the bank. I sat down with a representative and explained calmly, though my hands trembled. I removed Emily from my accounts, secured my savings, and placed new restrictions on every card. No more access, no more free rides. The representative looked at me with quiet sympathy, but I held my head high. At home, I called my lawyer again. This time, I asked about more than my will. I asked about legal protections, about how to shield myself from someone who had proven she would exploit me without hesitation. My lawyer didn't hesitate. "We can revise your estate. We can put protections in place so she has no claim to your assets if something happens to you. And if you choose, we can pursue her misuse of your finances now." Hearing those words was like a weight lifting from my chest. For the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless. I wasn't just a mother left behind at an airport. I was a woman with rights, with choices, with the ability to fight back. That night, I sat in the living room with all the evidence spread out before me. Receipts, screenshots, cash. A record of every betrayal. My tears had dried long ago. Now, all I felt was fire. Emily had stolen my dream. But she would not steal my dignity. She would not steal my future. And little did she know, I was already rewriting her future. Her betrayal was a wound. But my preparation became my armor. By the time I finished gathering the evidence, I was no longer shaking. I was steady, focused. I had spent too many years putting my daughter's needs above my own. And now, finally, I was protecting myself. The next morning, I returned to my lawyer's office, a thick folder in my hands. I spread everything across her desk, screenshots, bank records, receipts, the cash I had found hidden away. She flipped through each piece carefully, her eyebrows climbing higher with every page. "This isn't just disobedience," she said, finally, her voice firm. "This is exploitation. She's stolen from you, both emotionally and financially. You've given her everything, and she's taken advantage of it. We can take steps to secure your future immediately." I nodded, my throat tight. "I want my will changed. I don't want her to inherit a single thing I've worked for. Not the house, not the savings, nothing." The lawyer leaned forward. "Are you sure? That's a drastic step." I took a breath, my voice steady. "She left me at an airport with nothing but humiliation." She laughed while she walked away with my dreams. "I've spent 59 years sacrificing, and I refuse to let the rest of my life be stolen by someone who doesn't respect me." For the first time, I felt powerful saying it. We worked through the revisions step by step, detail by detail. My assets were locked into trusts and protections. Emily's name was erased from the documents that once promised her everything. Instead, I designated charities, my sister, and causes I cared about. People and organizations that would honor my sacrifices, not spit on them. When the lawyer slid the final papers across the desk for me to sign, my hand didn't tremble. The pen glided smoothly across the page, sealing the decision with ink that felt heavier than steel. It was done. My daughter had abandoned me, and in turn, I had cut her out of my future. On the way home, I stopped at the bank once more. I updated security, closed old accounts, and moved my savings into new ones Emily could never touch. Each transaction felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. By the time I left, I no longer felt like a victim. I felt like a survivor preparing for battle. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. The documents spread out before me. The scarf I had saved for Paris lay across my shoulders, not as a symbol of loss anymore, but as a reminder of strength. I had wanted to wear it in the city of light, but instead, I wore it as armor in my own living room. I thought of Emily then, laughing with her friends in Paris, spending my money, living a dream she had stolen. For the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I pictured her face when she came home. When she realized what she had lost. When she realized the mother she thought she could manipulate had finally drawn the line. Because this wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about respect, about teaching her that choices have consequences even for daughters. My sister called later that night, her voice warm but cautious. "Are you sure this is what you want, Helen? Cutting her out?" I took a deep breath. She cut me out first. The moment she walked through that gate without me, she made her choice. Now I'm making mine. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. My dreams were not of airports and betrayals, but of freedom. Because I knew the next time Emily walked into this house, it wouldn't be me who felt powerless. And soon she would learn what it meant to betray the wrong mother. The confrontation I once feared, I now welcomed. 2 weeks after she left me stranded, I heard the familiar sound of keys jingling at the front door. My heart raced, but not with fear, not with grief, with resolve. Emily breezed in, suitcase rolling behind her, wearing a wide smile and a new coat I had never seen before. Parisian, no doubt paid for with the money she had stolen. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes sparkling with the glow of someone who had been living freely, without shame. "Mom," she chirped, her voice dripping with false warmth. "I'm back." I sat at the kitchen table, waiting. Papers and receipts lay neatly stacked in front of me, my phone open to the screenshots I had saved. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I simply looked at her. She faltered for just a moment, her smile flickering. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy to see me?" I didn't answer her question. Instead, I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit down." Emily rolled her eyes, dragging her suitcase into the hall before flopping into the chair. "What's this about? You look so serious." I slid the first receipt across the table. Then another. Then the screenshots of her messages. Her face shifted confusion first, then irritation, and finally, a flash of fear she quickly tried to hide. "What is this?" she demanded, her tone defensive. "You tell me," I said, my voice calm, steady. "The receipts, the hotel booking, the money missing from my account, the messages you sent to your friends, laughing about tricking me. Do you really think I wouldn't find out?" She scoffed, folding her arms. "You went through my stuff? Seriously? That's an invasion of privacy." "Privacy?" I repeated, my voice tightening. "You stole from me. You lied to me. You abandoned me in front of hundreds of strangers, left me humiliated, and then bragged about it. And you're worried about your privacy?" Her jaw clenched, and she looked away. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt. But then she smirked again, leaning back in her chair. "Oh, come on. It's not that big of a deal. I went to Paris. You'll survive." My chest burned with rage, but I didn't let it show. I leaned forward, sliding the updated will across the table. No, Emily, you're the one who won't survive this, not the way you think. Her smirk faded. She scanned the papers, her eyes widening as the reality sank in. What is this? My will, I said coldly. You're no longer in it. No house, no savings, nothing. I've secured my assets so you'll never touch another cent of mine again. Her face drained of color. You can't be serious. I am, I replied. You left me with nothing at that airport. Now I'm leaving you with nothing in the future. She slammed her hands on the table, her voice rising. You're being dramatic. I'm your daughter. You can't just cut me out like that. I stood slowly, meeting her eyes with a calm I didn't know I possessed. Being my daughter should have meant loyalty, respect, love. But you showed me that being my daughter means nothing to you, and now you mean nothing to my estate. Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no quick comeback, no excuse sharp enough to cut through the truth. I gathered the papers calmly, stacking them neatly. My voice was steady, but inside, I felt a power I hadn't felt in years. She could scream, she could beg, she could rage, but nothing would undo what she had done. Because this wasn't about Paris anymore. It was about every sacrifice I had made, every piece of myself I had given, every ounce of love I had poured into her only to be repaid with betrayal. And now, finally, I was done. And in that moment, I knew the daughter I raised was gone. Her arrogance was louder than any apology. The silence between us stretched for what felt like hours. Emily stared at the documents in front of her, her hands trembling slightly even as she tried to hide it. I waited, calm, steady, letting her absorb the reality she had created for herself. Finally, she snapped. "This is insane!" she shouted, pushing the papers back across the table. "You're overreacting. All of this over one trip? Over one mistake? One mistake?" My voice was low, but sharp. "Emily, you didn't just take a trip. You lied. You stole. You abandoned me in public and mocked me behind my back. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." She jumped to her feet, her face flushed with anger. "You don't get it. You've always controlled everything, my life, my choices, where I go, what I do. I just wanted something for myself for once." I stood too, but my tone stayed calm. "Something for yourself? You took it by ripping it out of my hands. If you had wanted Paris, you could have said so. But instead, you tricked me, you humiliated me." Her eyes narrowed, and she jabbed a finger toward me. "You're just jealous. Jealous that I got to have fun, that I got to live, while you sit here stuck in this boring house." The words hit like knives, but I didn't flinch. I had already heard worse from her, seen worse in her actions. I crossed my arms and said, "No, Emily, I'm not jealous. I'm disappointed, and I'm done." "You're pathetic. You think cutting me out of your stupid will is gonna scare me?" "I don't need your money." I tilted my head, watching her carefully. "Don't you?" Her confidence faltered for a moment. She looked away, chewing her lip, before snapping back. "I can make it on my own. My friends will help me. I don't need you." But I could hear the crack in her voice. She was bluffing, and we both knew it. "You'll find out soon enough," I said softly. "Money runs out. Friends disappear, and when they do, you'll remember the mother you betrayed." Emily's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of rage. "You're cruel," she hissed. "You don't love me. No mother would do this." I stepped closer, my gaze unwavering. "No daughter would do what you did, and love without respect isn't love, it's weakness. I won't be weak anymore." She recoiled as if I had slapped her, her face twisting with anger. She grabbed her suitcase from the hallway, yanking it upright with a screech of wheels. "Fine," she spat. "If that's how it's going to be, I'm out. Don't bother calling me when you're old and alone." Her words echoed through the house like poison. But I didn't chase her. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply stood still, watching her storm out the same way she had walked away from me at the airport. The door slammed. Silence filled the house once again. But this silence wasn't the same as before. It didn't feel suffocating. It felt liberating, because for the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing her. She had already shown me she was willing to throw me away. Now, I had shown her I was strong enough to let her go. And the real punishment was only just beginning. Her pride crumbled faster than her excuses. For the first few days after Emily stormed out, the house felt different. Not lighter. Not yet, but steadier. I could breathe without waiting for another betrayal, another lie. Still, part of me wondered, how long would it take before she realized the world outside wasn't as forgiving as I had been? It didn't take long. By the end of the first week, the calls started. At first, they were casual. "Hey Mom, just checking in. How are you?" Her voice was light, forced, as if nothing had happened. I didn't bite. I answered politely but firmly, keeping the conversations short. Then the tone shifted. "I'm running low on cash. Can you just spot me a little until payday?" I closed my eyes, steadying my voice. "No, Emily, that's not happening." She sighed dramatically, muttering about how unfair I was being. But I didn't budge. Another week passed. The messages grew angrier. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're my mother. You're supposed to help me." Help. That word stung. Hadn't I helped her all her life? Every dollar I earned, every hour I worked, every dream I set aside, it had all been to help her. And she had repaid me by stealing the one dream I had kept for myself. I didn't respond. Then came the desperation. "Mom, please, my card got declined. Rent is due. I don't know what to do." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the message. My chest ached, not with temptation to give in, but with sorrow that it had come to this. But I reminded myself, this was the consequence she had earned. I typed back one sentence, "Figure it out, Emily." The phone stayed silent for hours after that. Word trickled in through family and mutual acquaintances. Emily was struggling. Friends she had flaunted her Paris trip with were pulling away after all. Their loyalty was only as deep as the dinners and drinks she could afford. Without my money, she couldn't keep up. Without my support, she couldn't maintain the life she had stolen. I heard she had moved in temporarily with a friend, then another. Each stay ended the same way. Arguments, broken promises, slammed doors. Emily had always been charming when things went her way, but when the money dried up and the favors ran out, her charm vanished too. Meanwhile, I grew stronger. I filled my days with small joys I had long neglected. I painted again, colors sweeping across canvas with a freedom I hadn't felt in years. I read books late into the night without guilt. I sat in my garden, letting the sun warm my skin, realizing that peace had been here all along. I had just been too busy sacrificing myself to notice it. But even in my peace, I knew the storm wasn't over. Emily wasn't finished with me yet. She had been spoiled too long, shielded too often, for her to give up so easily. And I was right. One evening, the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to hear what came next. Her voice was different this time, quieter, but sharp at the edges. "Mom, I need to come home." I took a slow breath, letting the silence hang heavy before I replied. "And why is that?" She hesitated. "Because things aren't working out. I just need a place to stay for a while." "Please." I closed my eyes, remembering the image of her smirking at me in the airport. The way she walked away without a backward glance. When I opened them, my voice was steady. "If you come home, it won't be the same. No more lies. No more stealing. No more disrespect. You'll contribute. You'll live by my rules or you won't live here at all." Her sharp intake of breath told me everything. She hadn't expected conditions. She hadn't expected boundaries. "You're unbelievable," she spat. "After everything I've done for you?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Everything you've done for me? Emily, you left me at an airport with nothing but humiliation. You mocked me to your friends, you stole my money, and you think I owe you a roof over your head? Her silence was louder than her anger had ever been. Finally, she muttered, "Fine. Forget it." The line went dead. I sat back, my heart pounding. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Because I realized something profound. She was unraveling. And I wasn't. And I wasn't finished teaching her the cost of betrayal. Every tear I once shed became a brick in the wall of my resolve. Weeks passed. The silence in the house no longer felt empty, it felt peaceful. I woke each morning without dread. Without the weight of wondering what new lie or betrayal Emily would bring into my life. For the first time in years, my life was my own. I poured my energy into rebuilding. I met with financial planners to secure my accounts further, creating a future Emily could never tamper with again. I shifted part of my savings into charities, places where I knew the money would make a difference. Feeding children, funding scholarships, supporting women who had no one, ironically. Helping strangers felt more rewarding than helping the daughter who had only ever taken. Friends and family rallied around me. My sister called often, reminding me I wasn't alone. Neighbors dropped by with meals, their quiet gestures filling the silence with kindness. Even people I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, shocked by Emily's betrayal but inspired by my strength. For the first time, I didn't feel like the abandoned mother from the airport. I felt like a woman reclaiming her dignity. Meanwhile, whispers about Emily's downfall reached me in bits and pieces. She was bouncing between couches, no longer welcome with the friends who had once laughed at her cruelty. The money she flaunted was gone. The charm she wielded had worn thin. Without resources, without loyalty, she was beginning to taste the loneliness she had once left me to choke on. The old me might have felt pity. The old me might have caved, reaching for my wallet to save her. But not anymore. I loved my daughter still, in a way only a mother can, but love without respect isn't love. It's weakness. And I refused to be weak again. One night, I sat in my living room, the Paris scarf draped across my shoulders, flipping through a book of French art I had bought years ago. Instead of feeling the sting of loss, I felt something else. Possibility. The trip she stole from me wasn't gone forever. Someday, I would go on my own terms. For myself. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Emily's name lit up the screen. For a moment, I simply stared at it, my chest tightening. Finally, I answered. Her voice was small, brittle. "Mom, I don't have anywhere else to go." I swallowed hard, steadying myself. "Then maybe it's time you learn how to stand on your own." Her breath hitched, a faint sob breaking through. "Please, I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I closed my eyes. "It does. It means I gave you everything for 20 years. It means I worked until my body ached so you could have choices I never had. It means I loved you even when you hurt me. But it also means I'm not going to let you destroy me anymore." Silence stretched on the other end. Then, her voice hardened. "You'll regret this. You'll end up old and alone, and then you'll wish you had me." My heart twisted at the cruelty, but I kept my voice calm. I'd rather be alone in peace than chained to betrayal. The line went dead. I set the phone down, exhaling slowly. My hands trembled, but not from weakness. From power. From the knowledge that I had finally chosen myself over her manipulations. Because every choice she made pushed her further into the caminers, the consequences she had earned. And every choice I made pulled me closer to the freedom I had long deserved. And as I stood firm, I felt stronger than I ever had. Justice didn't come from a courtroom, it came from my own living room. It was late one evening when I heard the knock on the door. Firm, desperate, the kind of knocking that carried more than impatience, it carried fear. My chest tightened before I even looked through the peephole. I already knew who it was. Emily. She stood on the porch, her hair disheveled, her eyes rimmed with red. The confident glow she'd carried to Paris was gone, replaced by exhaustion and desperation. She looked smaller somehow, shrunken under the weight of her own choices. "Mom," she whispered when I opened the door, her voice trembling. "Please, I don't have anywhere else to go." For a moment, I just looked at her. My daughter. The child I had carried, nurtured, sacrificed for, and the same person who had left me in an airport to rot in humiliation. My heart ached, but my spine stayed straight. I stepped aside just enough to let her in. She dropped her suitcase in the hallway, collapsing onto the couch. Her hands shook as she twisted them together. "I made a mistake," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I shouldn't have done what I did. I shouldn't have taken the ticket. I shouldn't have—" Her words trailed off, swallowed by tears. I sat across from her, my expression calm. "You didn't make a mistake, Emily. You made a choice, over and over again." Her head snapped up, eyes flashing with frustration. "Why can't you just forgive me? You're my mother. That's what mothers are supposed to do." I leaned forward, my voice sharp but steady. "Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Forgiveness doesn't give you the right to hurt me again." Her lip trembled. "But I don't have anyone else. My friends, they're gone. I can't pay my rent. I don't even have food. Please, Mom. Just let me stay. Just help me this once." The old me, the mother who sacrificed until she had nothing left, ached to reach for her, to hold her, to give in. But the woman I had become knew better. "If you stay here," I said firmly, "it will be under my rules. You will work. You will contribute. You will respect me. And if you can't do that, you won't stay at all." Her face hardened. "So that's it? You're just going to hold this over my head forever? Punish me for one trip?" My voice rose for the first time, fueled by months of bottled pain. "You abandoned me. You humiliated me. You stole from me and laughed about it. Do you understand what that did to me?" She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. But still, her pride clung to her like armor. "I said I was sorry," she shouted. "What more do you want from me?" I shook my head slowly. "I want respect. And that's something you've never been willing to give." The room fell silent, thick with the weight of truth. Emily buried her face in her hands, sobbing. But even then, I could see it, the calculation, the manipulation woven into her tears. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for the consequences, and I refused to be her safety net again. I stood, pulling the updated will from the drawer and placing it gently on the coffee table. "This is who I am now. I'm not your victim. I'm not your bank account. I'm your mother, yes, but I'm also a woman who deserves dignity. And if you can't accept that, then you can walk back out that door." Her sobs quieted. Her eyes darted to the papers, to me, then back again. For the first time, I saw it clearly, the realization that she had lost control over me, and she hated it. In that silence, I knew the war was over, but not in her favor. The silence in my home no longer felt empty, it felt free. After Emily left that night, the house was quiet again. But this time, it didn't suffocate me. It comforted me. No slammed doors, no whispered lies, no constant fear of what betrayal might come next. Just peace. I woke the next morning lighter than I had felt in years. The sun streamed through the curtains, spilling across the floor in warm patterns. I made coffee slowly, savoring the smell, the steam, the quiet ritual of it. For once, I wasn't rushing to meet anyone else's needs. I was just living for me. Piece by piece, I rebuilt my world. I redecorated the living room, pulling down photos that had once told the story of a family that no longer existed. In their place, I hung art I chose for myself, vivid colors, bold strokes, images that reflected not who I used to be, but who I was becoming. I took up painting again, something I hadn't done since before Emily was born. My first strokes were shaky, uncertain, but soon the canvas bloomed with expression. Each brushstroke was a release, a reminder that I still had creativity, passion, and beauty inside me, things I had buried under years of sacrifice. I called my sister and booked a small weekend trip with her, not to Paris, not yet, but to the coast. We walked along the shore, ate fresh seafood, and laughed until my stomach hurt. For the first time in decades, I wasn't the background character in someone else's life. I was the main character in my own. Neighbors noticed the change in me too. They saw me gardening in the mornings, smiling at the flowers that bloomed under my care. They saw me walking confidently, no longer hunched under the invisible weight of disappointment. People began to say I looked younger, lighter, like I had shed years of pain. And in a way, I had. But Paris still lingered in the back of my mind. The dream Emily had stolen wasn't gone, it was waiting. One evening, I pulled out my journal again. The first page still carried the blurred ink of my old entry, so excited for Paris with Emily. I turned to a new page and wrote, "One day, I will go to Paris alone, on my terms." The thought didn't sting, it thrilled me. Meanwhile, whispers of Emily's life continued to trickle in. Friends of friends said she was still drifting, still struggling, still trying to charm her way into stability. But the charm didn't work anymore. People had seen through her. The glamour of Paris had faded into the reality of bills and consequences. For once, I didn't feel responsible. I didn't feel the urge to swoop in, to fix, to save. I felt only clarity. She had chosen this path. And now she was walking it alone. And I was walking mine stronger, freer, happier. Some nights, I still thought of her. I wondered if she ever replayed the airport moment the way I did. I wondered if she realized how much damage she had done, or if she still believed she was justified. But instead of letting those thoughts consume me, I turned them into fuel. Fuel to keep moving forward. Fuel to keep choosing myself. Because the truth was, the daughter I had raised no longer existed. In her place was someone unrecognizable, and maybe, someday, she would find her way back. But until then, I wasn't waiting. I had waited long enough. Now, I was living. And each day, I thanked myself for finally choosing me. What began as betrayal ended as my liberation. The day Emily left me at the airport, I thought my world had ended. I sat there in that crowded terminal, humiliated, broken, watching my daughter disappear with my ticket, my passport, and my dream. In that moment, I believed I would never recover. But I was wrong. Because sometimes the very moment you think will destroy you becomes the moment that saves you. That betrayal forced me to stop living for someone who never valued me. It forced me to face the truth I had been avoiding for years, that love without respect is just exploitation. That sacrifice without gratitude is just slavery. That being a mother didn't mean erasing myself completely. For decades, I had poured everything into Emily. I had believed that if I gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, she would one day look at me with the same devotion I had always felt for her. But instead, she looked at me as a resource, a bank, a doormat, someone to be used and discarded. And in Paris she proved it. But that moment at the airport wasn't the end, it was the beginning. It pushed me to reclaim my power, to secure my future, to cut her out of my will, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. To say for the first time in my life, I matter too. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep. Nights when memories of her as a child, her laughter, her tiny hand in mine haunted me. There were days I questioned whether I had been too harsh. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered the smirk on her face as she boarded that plane. The deliberate cruelty, the coldness. And then I remembered why I had to be strong. Because strength wasn't about revenge, it was about survival. Now, when I look around my home, I don't see a crime scene anymore. I see freedom. I see walls decorated with art I chose for myself. I see a garden blooming with flowers that don't ask for anything except sunlight. I see a woman who learned that being left behind wasn't the worst thing that could happen sometimes, it's the best. Paris is still waiting for me. One day, I'll walk those cobblestone streets, not as a victim, not as a broken mother, but as a woman who chose herself. I'll sip coffee in a cafe, I'll watch the Eiffel Tower glow at night, and I'll write in my journal again. And when I do, it won't be with tears on the page. It will be with pride. I don't know what will become of Emily. Maybe she'll learn, maybe she won't. Maybe she'll spend her life chasing thrills at the expense of others. Or maybe, someday, she'll finally understand what she threw away. But her choices are hers to live with now. And mine? Mine are finally my own. So if you're listening to my story and you've ever felt abandoned, betrayed, or left behind, hear me clearly. It's not the end. Sometimes being left behind is exactly what you need to find yourself again. Because the truth is, the airport wasn't where my story ended. It was where my new one began. Because in the end, being left behind was the best gift she ever gave me.